Hi, I'm Jolene. My sister didn't just betray me, she humiliated me in front of a $360,000 hiring panel, tore me down like I was nothing. But what really broke me, it wasn't just the silence. It was watching my own family laugh behind closed doors, rewrite our history, and pretend I never existed. And yet, when the CEO kissed my hand, she froze. Have you ever been erased by someone who was supposed to protect you? Has your own blood ever turned a win into a weapon? Let me know. What time are you hearing this? And where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. I want to hear your story too. The lobby at Valorate was all chrome and tension. Fluorescent lights buzzed like warnings, echoing off glass walls that reflected my every flaw. I stood at the reception desk for what felt like hours, clutching a manila folder that now seemed embarrassingly hopeful. No one greeted me. No one even looked up. A woman in stilettos brushed past me, nose lifted, and I caught my reflection in the polished floor. Scuffed shoes, thrifted blazer, secondhand confidence. I was out of place, and everyone knew it. Inside the panel room, the air was 10 degrees colder. The table stretched wide and sleek, surrounded by suits and polished egos. I sat quietly at the end, holding my breath with every tick of the wall clock. Then she walked in. Renata. Navy silk blouse, heels that clicked like punctuation marks on marble, lips curved in a familiar smirk. She didn't even glance at me, just breezed in like the crown belonged to her, like nothing ever happened between us. My stomach flipped, but I sat straighter. She wasn't going to see me flinch. She once laughed at me, 16 years ago, when I showed her my first resume draft. "You're dressing ambition in clearance rack words, Joe." I never forgot that. "Jolene Carter!" someone called. I stood. My voice didn't shake, but my hands were stiff as I handed over my materials. Renata didn't even reach for them. Greg did, a smug middle manager type with hair gelled into submission. "We've reviewed your credentials," he said, flipping through my folder with theatrical disdain. "Honestly, I'm not sure how you even made it to this table." I opened my mouth to respond, but he waved a hand. "Let's move to testing," he said. "Renata?" She finally looked at me. That same smile, equal parts pity and pleasure. She lifted my resume from the table. With a red Sharpie she must have brought just for this moment, she wrote one word across the top. Unqualified. Then slid it back across the table to me like a bill I couldn't pay. Greg took my printed test results and, God help me, ripped them in half. "Guess we don't need this either." Laughter, controlled, sharp, like they rehearsed it. My throat clenched, but I held my chin up. My palms were wet. I focused on the glass pitcher of water in the center of the table, counted the air bubbles. That's when I saw him, the last panelist to my left, polished, grinning too easily. I knew that face. A few months ago, I passed him in the hallway of Renata's condo, late night, hoodie, door left slightly ajar. He had chuckled at something she said before disappearing inside. I looked between them. He caught my gaze and looked away too quickly. She shifted in her chair but never acknowledged him. Rigged. This wasn't a panel, it was a stage. And the play had already been cast. I swallowed the scream lodged in my throat. The intern by the door whispered to another, "Didn't know nepotism still looked that cheap." I didn't flinch. I stared straight ahead, even when my voice refused to work again, even when no one asked a second question. I thought about Mom's voice on the phone last week. "Don't embarrass the family again, Joe." I thought about all the nights I rehearsed for this, practiced every possible answer, perfected every document. It didn't matter. "You're not here to be liked," I told myself. "You're here to be seen." I left the room in silence, walked past the smirks, the smothered laughter, the receptionist who avoided eye contact. But I didn't leave the building. As the elevator doors closed behind a group of interns, I stepped forward again. "One last thing," I whispered. 16 months ago, I watched Valorate's CEO raise a champagne glass to Renata's trailblazing leadership in AI ethics. Applause thundered through the executive lounge, echoing off the walls like a slap. I stood by the back wall, invisible. Renata smiled beneath the spotlight, nodding modestly as if the accolades didn't hang from my bones. 2 months of sleepless nights. I built the ethics framework from scratch, coding through migraines and doubt, imagining a day I'd present it as my first real consultancy pitch. I'd shared it with Renata because I was proud, because she'd said, "Send it my way when it's ready. I'll help you frame it better." I didn't hesitate. She clinked her glass to mine that night. "Joe, this is genius," she'd said, eyes shining with something I mistook for sisterhood. "Seriously, this could change the industry." And a month later, Valorate released the framework, not as mine, as hers. They titled the company newsletter, "Renata Wells, Architect of Ethical Intelligence." I reread it until the text blurred. They called her a pioneer. My name wasn't mentioned, not even a footnote. I didn't confront her at first. I told myself maybe it was a coincidence, maybe someone else had a similar idea. Maybe I was just paranoid. But the night of Dad's retirement dinner, I cracked. "You presented my framework," I said, voice low but tight, as she sipped wine like nothing mattered. "That AI protocol? I built it. I shared it with you." She laughed. "Joe, if you wanted credit, you should have protected it. No one forced you to be naive." She tapped her glass. "Besides, you never emailed it to me, so technically, you stole it," Mom interrupted. "Girls, please, not at the table." No one looked at me, not even Dad. It was like accusing someone of stealing the sun. They were too busy basking in the warmth to care where it came from. That night, I stopped writing code, until today. I stared at my laptop screen in my tiny apartment, heart hammering. After so long, I finally opened the old cloud archive, the one I used before switching drives. My fingers trembled as I navigated through dusty folders, searching like a ghost hunter. There it was. Access logs, dates, IPS. 3 nights before the Valorate pitch, Renata's credentials logged into my private folder. She hadn't even tried to cover her tracks. I took screenshots, saved every timestamp. It wasn't paranoia, it was fact. She stole from me. And worse, she gaslit me into believing it wasn't real, into thinking I was just the bitter sister with nothing to show. But now I wasn't helpless. I wasn't sobbing in the shadows anymore. I had proof. Tomorrow's board meeting included an AI compliance review, using a structure built on my bones. I stared at the agenda on the Valorate portal. I wasn't just going to sit through another humiliation. Not this time. "They used my voice to silence me," I whispered. Then I smiled. But I'm not voiceless anymore. I reached for my phone, hesitated only for a breath, then scrolled to a number I hadn't dialed in years. When the line picked up, I said, "I need a forensic favor." I slowed the car as I passed my mother's house. There were balloons tangled in the mailbox, cars lined up along the curb, laughter spilling through the open windows. It was her birthday. No one had called. No one had texted. I hadn't been invited. I pulled over half a block away, heart pounding. The dashboard clock glowed a steady 6:18 p.m. I stared at my phone, scrolling through old texts from Mom, half responses, dry thumbs-ups, messages that trailed into silence. Somewhere between those unread lines, I'd been erased. Not loudly, quietly, strategically. The party wasn't a secret. Not really. I stumbled upon it the same way I seem to discover everything these days. By accident. A mutual friend had posted an Instagram story. Streamers, cake, matching family t-shirts. Renata was front and center, wine in hand, cheek pressed against Mom's, captioned, "So grateful for my family." Even my ex-husband was there. Standing next to Renata, like they shared some inside joke I'd never be allowed to laugh at. I blinked, rewatched the story, paused it on my cousin Grace's face. I used to braid her hair at sleepovers. I texted Mom, "Hey, is everything okay?" No reply. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just about missing cake. It was about absence turning into policy, about being written out like a bad chapter. I thought of past birthdays, how I'd hosted them, Cleaned up after everyone, stayed late to wrap leftovers and do the dishes while the others left smiling. I used to think it made me indispensable. Maybe it just made me easy to forget. The next day, Mia called. We talked about work, her kids, the usual sugarcoating, but then she said, "I thought you saw the invite in the family chat." "What chat?" I asked. Silence. Mia. She exhaled. "Look, it's just... Renata made a second group a while ago. Said you'd probably stir things up." I didn't speak. She said it's just easier. For the family, I wanted to scream. Instead, I hung up. Later that night, I confronted my brother over the phone. "You knew." He sighed. "It's not about you. It's just... easier this way." "Easier for who?" He didn't answer. The line went dead, but the message rang louder than any ringtone. Renata hadn't just sabotaged my career, she'd rewritten my role in the family, and no one stopped her. They adapted to her version of me because it was more convenient, less messy, less threatening. I opened my notes app, fingers trembling, and typed, "If I'm a threat, it's because you chose lies over love." I stared at the words, let them sink in. Then I deleted them. Not yet, but soon. The ballroom glowed with amber chandeliers and the hum of 100 strategic conversations. I clutched my name badge like a lifeline, my heels sinking slightly into the plush carpet as I scanned the room. San Diego, Tech Week, Women in Leadership Gala. I wasn't here to make a scene, just to be seen. I was halfway through a polite conversation with a venture partner from Austin when I spotted her, Renata in emerald green, cutting through the crowd like a blade, her posture regal, her laugh louder than necessary. She hadn't seen me yet, or maybe she had. The moment cracked when the woman beside her nodded toward me. "Is that your sister? I heard she built something brilliant in AI ethics." Renata's smile didn't falter, but her voice did. It cooled. "Oh, Jolene? No, we're not related. She's just someone I used to mentor, years ago." The table went silent. Someone's fork tapped against porcelain. A dry laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. It wasn't humor, it was reflex. I nodded at the woman, made some vague remark about small industries, then excused myself to the restroom. A junior engineer from another firm caught up with me near the hallway. "Are you okay?" I smiled, lied. "Of course, it's just hot in here." 16 years ago, Renata once bloodied her knuckles defending me during a hallway fight in high school. Back then, she stood in front of me. Now, she stood on top of me, kicking dirt on the memory. I wanted to leave the gala. Instead, I stayed. Toasted to success I didn't feel. Networked through the tightness in my throat. She didn't approach me again. She didn't need to. Her denial had already echoed further than any handshake could reach. 2 days later, I scanned my badge at Valorit's main office. Access denied. The message blinked red like a warning. I tried again. Same result. At my desk, I logged into the system. My profile had changed. J. Doyle. My surname was gone, the one Renata and I shared. HR wasn't helpful. "It's part of our new policy, avoiding appearance of conflicts of interest," the rep said, tapping at her tablet like it was gospel. I believe the memo came from the ethics division. I requested the document. The header hit me like a slap. Proposed. Separate archival identities for affiliated applicants to ensure evaluation objectivity. Initiated by Renata Doyle. So this was her game. She hadn't just erased my name, she made it policy. I stared at the screen, didn't blink. I downloaded every document, quietly, thoroughly. "You want me invisible?" I whispered. "Then let's haunt." That night I started the list. People Renata had used, memos she'd buried, meetings she thought I wasn't invited to. The digital trail always leaves a scent if you know where to look. At 9:17 the next morning, an email pinged into my inbox from HR. Subject: urgent, conflict disclosure meeting. No details, no attachments, just a time I leaned back, lips curving slowly. Let's play. The second I walked into Valorant's lobby, I knew something was wrong. Not the kind of wrong that slams you in the face, but the kind that slithers around you, invisible, cold. A junior marketing associate passed me, head down, and suddenly turned into the break room like he forgot how to walk straight. Eyes darted, lips moved in half conversations. The air buzzed with something unspoken. The Slack ping came as I was waiting for the elevator. Hey, did you really cheat in college? Just wanted to ask before I say anything. My chest tightened. That name, that word, cheat. My thumb froze over the screen. I hadn't heard that accusation in years, not since someone left a cryptic comment under my thesis defense livestream. I'd buried it, thought it had decayed. By the time I reached my desk, 2 more pings had stacked, then a third, asking if HR had contacted me yet. I opened the internal news thread. There it was. A 10-year-old Reddit post, unearthed and repackaged with new commentary, screenshots, and a grotesque headline. Did Valorate's favorite diversity hire fake her way through MIT? Anonymous usernames dragged me line by line. The thesis I'd poured my 20s into was under fire by people who hadn't read it. A blurry image, supposedly showing side-by-side text from another paper, floated like damning proof. Unoriginal. Affirmative action trash. Renata Doyle deserved better colleagues. And there it was, the name. Again, her name slipped into the comment section like a knife. I went to legal. They were sympathetic, polished, useless. We're monitoring the situation, Jolene, but unless it escalates into actionable defamation, our hands are tied. My hands weren't. I stayed late that night, not to cry, but to map. I opened my incident folder, the one I'd started quietly after my badge was stripped. I drew lines, labeled them, cross-referenced dates. It wasn't random, it was a web. Every public takedown, every discrediting move, every calculated silence. They pulsed from one source. I made one call. Can you trace an IP behind a deleted Reddit post? My old contact from cybersecurity didn't ask questions, just sent me a green dot later that night with a file attached. One of the comments, the one that first resurfaced the thesis rumor, had been posted from a guest network at a residential property in Palm Springs, registered under a secondary LLC belonging to Renata. The burn behind my eyes didn't come from shame this time. I took a breath, saved the screenshots to an encrypted folder. My voice was no longer trembling, it was sharpening. The next morning, I wrote a blog post. To every woman who's been targeted by a whisper. No names, no rage, just truth. About weaponized rumors, about silent sabotage, about what it means to rise while they try to drown you in shadows. I hit publish. It exploded. Hundreds of comments. Women sharing stories. Men too, though fewer. A small media site picked it up. Then a podcast. And then my calendar pinged. Private session. Board discussion, conduct review. No sender, no explanation. I stared at the screen. Let them try. The email had no greeting. No signature, just, your engagement has been canceled effective immediately. Thank you for your time. That startup had been my most promising client this quarter. 3 months of prep, legal drafts, tech scoping, gone in 12 words. No call, no warning. I didn't feel panic. I felt precision. This was no coincidence. I dialed the project manager I'd worked with, Eric, straight to voicemail. I texted. Nothing. Checked his LinkedIn. He'd just reposted Valorate's press release about a new strategic partnership. The name of the startup was in the first sentence. I clicked through. There it was. Renata's face, front and center, grinning like she'd never broken a soul. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. It wasn't just that she beat me to the deal. She knew I was working with them. She waited, then undercut and gutted me from the inside out. She was reshaping my life like a spreadsheet, deleting rows, blocking columns, renaming tabs. But not this time. I opened a folder on my desktop and renamed it, In Case I'm Silenced. I started documenting every missed call, every unsigned clause, every internal doc that looked too polished too fast. I recorded voice memos, uploaded receipts, reached out, quietly, to the few clients I still trusted. No longer to ask for support, just facts, just truth. And then, one night, an anonymous email landed in my inbox. No body text, just a Dropbox link. I hesitated, scanned, isolated, downloaded. It was an audio file. Renata's voice filled the silence like venom slipping under skin. If you want Valerate's funding, you'll drop Jolene, or you'll lose more than a contract. Think smart. I played it once, then again. A third time, headphones in, heart flat, not to wound myself, to memorize the tone, to understand the method. Someone had recorded her. Someone in the room when she thought she held all the power. I encrypted it, sent a copy to my attorney, another to an off-site vault. I wasn't going to beg for justice. I was going to walk it in myself. When the boardroom invite came through, subject, conduct review, I didn't blink. I clicked accept. I knew what they were trying to do. They were hoping I'd fumble, cry, collapse. I had done all three before, quietly, at home, behind locked doors. But that woman was gone. I pulled on my blazer, the navy one that made my eyes look colder, tied my hair back, walked down the hallway like it was mine. As I stepped into the elevator, my phone vibrated. A message from a blocked number lit the screen. Renata knows you're coming. I smiled. So did I. The email didn't mince words. Urgent review of executive conduct, internal ethics crisis. No fluff, no buffer, just a direct shot fired through Valerate's internal comms system, and it hit exactly where it was supposed to. I stared at the subject line, pulse steady. Malcolm had done it. I walked into the boardroom that afternoon, not as a guest, not as a sister, but as a witness. Malcolm was already there, suit crisp, expression unreadable. His calm had the weight of a coiled storm. The board filed in, some expectant, some skeptical. Renata arrived last, her lips curled in a smile too tight to be sincere. Malcolm didn't greet anyone. He opened a laptop, pressed a single key. Renata's voice poured out, laced with threat and arrogance. If you want Valerate's funding, you'll drop Jolene, or you'll lose more than a contract. Silence collapsed the room like a sudden vacuum. One board member gasped audibly. Another set down her pen like it had burned her hand. Renata stood, mouth parting. This is being taken out of con... Sit, Malcolm said, his voice quiet, lethal. You'll listen. For once. He walked them through the timeline, how my projects vanished, how client files were accessed, the metadata trails, the HR redactions, the falsified performance reviews. Each screen was a cut deeper into the facade Renata had built. She weaponized her position, he said simply, and her access. When he called for a suspension pending a full investigation, no one objected. Renata stood frozen, eyes darting for allies and finding none. From the back of the room, I said nothing. I didn't need to. Justice, at last, didn't require a voice. It required evidence and resolve. But that wasn't the part that cracked me open. It came after, in a quiet corridor just off the boardroom. Malcolm stopped me, his face less CEO, more human. There's something I need to tell you, he said. He opened his phone, pulled up a voice memo. I never meant to send this, I whispered before the first second played. I know, he replied. It was me. Months ago. Crying softly in the dark outside Valerate. I had recorded a message meant for myself, one of those confessions you never expect to be heard. I don't know how much more of this I can take, I had whispered then, brittle and small. Malcolm had found it on a shared drive, buried under layers of backup files, and he'd listened, sat with it, let it change him. That's when I knew, he said, I wasn't doing enough. We didn't say more. We didn't need to. There are apologies too big for words, and some truths too heavy for either of us to carry alone. Renata passed by moments later, her heels slicing into the carpet like threats. She didn't look at me. She looked through me. You think this is over? Her voice was low, venomous. You've declared war. I didn't flinch, then prepare to lose. When the vote passed and Renata's removal was made official, the room didn't erupt. It inhaled, like a city after a siren fades. Jolene Doyle, the woman they once humiliated, stood tall at the center of it all, now surrounded by board members shifting in their seats, glancing between her and the empty chair left behind. "Jolene," Malcolm said, his voice low but unambiguous, "we'd like you to take over as Chief Strategy Officer." Flashbulbs sparked from the press gallery. One whisper floated through the air like smoke. "She deserves it." I looked around, not at the chair but at the faces, the ones who ignored me, the ones who doubted me, the ones who watched me burn and never offered water. I could have said yes. Instead, I smiled. "No," I said simply. The room stiffened. A cough, a gasp, then absolute silence. "If I wanted power, I would have taken it years ago," I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel. "I want progress, not revenge." Someone laughed nervously. Another board member furrowed his brow. I continued. "I'm proposing a new division, one dedicated to ethical innovation, equity, and leadership development. Not for people like me, but for the ones who don't have a last name that opens doors, or a CEO who listens after it's too late." "There's no budget for that," someone muttered. "Make room," Malcolm replied, without hesitation. Arguments followed, about structure, about optics, about precedent. But I didn't blink. By the end of the hour, a provisional department was authorized. No title, no corner office, but influence, at last, earned, not granted. Weeks passed, quietly. I didn't need a podium to build impact. An internal memo appeared in Valerate's mentorship feed one Friday. No signature, no direct author. It read, "Level Ground, a mentorship initiative for women in underrepresented technical roles." It included peer matchups, anonymous feedback tools, and pathways to advancement built on transparency, not politics. Cassie, the new intern with two wide eyes and a laptop always 5 seconds from crashing, read the memo at her desk. She didn't say anything aloud. She just smiled, typed a short thank you, and sent it to HR. Subject line: "To whoever wrote this, you made me stay." The email found its way to me later that day. I didn't reply, just sat still with it for a long time. Some victories are too personal to share. Later, as I exited the building, the air sharp with fall's first bite, I spotted a familiar figure across the parking lot. Renata. She was bent over her car trunk, shoving boxes with more force than necessary. A framed certificate tumbled out and clanged against the asphalt. She looked up, caught my gaze. No words, no smiles, not even bitterness, just exhaustion hiding behind eyeliner too bold for 8 a.m. I didn't stop, didn't slow. I simply nodded once, turned away, and kept walking. The war might not be over, but this part, this chapter, was mine to close. Sunday mornings used to mean brunch. Loud voices layered over too sweet coffee and sticky syrup, the clatter of forks against ceramic. But today, I sat alone in the corner booth, staring at the seat across from me, once occupied by my father. Now, only my phone sat there, lit with a single message. I should have asked for the truth sooner. "I'm sorry, kiddo." My hand trembled slightly, not because it hurt, but because it didn't. Not anymore. Cassie knocked softly on my office door Monday morning, shoulders tight, eyes dancing between pride and panic. I just wanted to say thanks," she mumbled. "I was going to quit last month. Then I saw the level ground memo, and I stayed." I motioned for her to sit. She didn't, so I stood too. "You don't need to prove your worth," I said. "Just protect it." Her lip quivered. "You already did that for me." I didn't reply. We just stood there, two women linked by a thread stronger than blood. Recognition. 2 days later, I received an email from an old intern. No greeting, just a screenshot. A freelance consultant ad, Renata's name in bold. The email read, "She's looking for help rebranding." I stared at it for a long moment, then hit delete. Let her rewrite herself. I'm done being her editor. I drove out of the city that weekend. The cemetery was quiet, too quiet. Dry grass rustled beneath my boots as I approached my mother's headstone, the same pale gray slab, the same chipped corner. I placed a white lily on the soil. "I hope you see it now, Mom," I whispered. I didn't burn it all down. I just stopped letting them set the fire. I didn't linger. I didn't expect peace to come in a wave. Healing is slower than hurt. It drips, accumulates. Then one day, you realize the heaviness has shifted. Back home, I opened a drawer and pulled out a letter I'd written weeks ago, addressed to no one and everyone. Some scars whisper, not scream. They don't fade, but they teach. I don't want to forget. I just want to move forward with eyes wide open. I folded it again and tucked it away. A keepsake, not a confession. Then my laptop pinged, an email. Subject, invitation, keynote speaker, Women in AI Ethics Summit. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. Click, accept. Sometimes the deepest cuts don't come from strangers. They come from the people who once tucked you in at night, who knew your favorite cereal, who shared your last name. But here's what I've learned. The pain doesn't define you, your response does. I didn't win by destroying anyone, I won by choosing not to become what hurt me. And if you're standing where I once stood, overlooked, erased, betrayed, know this: you are not powerless. You are not alone. So let me ask you, what would you do if given the chance to lead with integrity, not revenge? Would you take it? If this story moved you, drop a 1 in the comments, or let me know where you're watching from. If it didn't resonate, I'd still love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done differently? And hey, if you're still here, that probably means this story meant something to you. So hit that subscribe button and join me for the next one. Because the next chapter, it might just be yours.